Our opening words are by the late Reverend Hope Johnson. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive, we care deeply, we live and love as best as we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling and making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living out our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, and being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. So come, let's worship. We'll be lighting our chalice this morning, and my chalice lighting helper is Elaine Stavansky. So I will light the chalice, and Elaine and I will say the words together.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world. Thanks, Elaine. Well, good morning, everybody. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, for this 1 hour, you are part of this congregation and you are welcome. It's great to see everybody on this kind of rainy, dismal Sunday morning. Good place to be, good place to start your day in the reflective space of beloved community here. So as we tend to do on our Zoom life, I'm going to invite us all to greet one another, take a few minutes. So Dustin will put us in gallery view and unmute yourselves and say hello to one another.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Everybody.
morning.
Morning.
Bravo, Edwin.
Good morning.
It was wonderful.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
You all look
Nice
very
shot. Got nice shot.
Woohoo.
All right, we'll invite you to mute yourselves up and we remind you that there'll be more chance to say hello to each other during our breakout room coffee hour at the end of our worship. I want to call your attention to these amazing flowers that come from the garden of Gail Murphy, and they are in honor of her son, John, David and Gail's son, John, whose birthday will be May 9th. And John Murphy grew up in this church. I find it hard to believe he's going to be 27 years old. So happy birthday, happy early birthday to John Murphy. One other announcement, and then I'm going to turn to Nancy Ovasca, who from our stewardship committee, who also has an announcement. But I want to remind you, and you'll start seeing some of this in the, you'll see it in the bell ringer and in the weekly distributions. 2 weeks from today is Mother's Day, and we have a very special guest, thanks to our diverse musical team, John Muraturi, who is a fabulous classical guitarist. You've been asking for a classical guitarist, and this guy is the best. It'll be a hybrid service, so John will actually be in our sanctuary with Ed. Ed tells me today that they've got one piece they're going to play together, which should be spectacular. So with the COVID protocols, we can take up to 60 folks in the sanctuary at this point. Everybody would be spaced apart. You'd have to wear your masks and all. But if you are interested in coming into the church on Mother's Day, and there will be Zoom, Dustin will do his Zoom magic, so you'll be able to watch it on Zoom. But as we all know, music is just so spectacular in our sanctuary. There's nothing better than live music in our sanctuary. So if you want to come on Mother's Day, I recommend that you start emailing Lenore or calling her soon. She will be tracking the folks who are coming, and there is limited seating, unfortunately, under the COVID protocols. So very exciting Sunday, 2 weeks from today. So as I said earlier, Nancy Ovasco is the chair of our stewardship committee, and she has a few words for us this morning. So we'll spotlight Nancy. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning. Along with the other members of the stewardship team, Mary Flanagan, Amy Hamilton, and Tracy Wagner, I'd like to thank all who have made their annual pledges, which fund next year's budget. It was good to see all who were able to come last week to drop off their pledge cards and also get a car wash. As of yesterday, we have 87 pledges in for a total of $152,000. Seeing all the numbers of people who have increased their pledges has been really encouraging. But we have a way to go to reach last year's total of $175,000. So the pledge drive continues. We hope to hear back from all our members and pledging friends. If you haven't made your pledge, it's not too late. You still can. You can mail or drop off your pledge card or even just a note to the church. Email Amy Hamilton at thehamiltonfamily@verizon.net. And you can also go through the church's website at www.udocs.org. Be patient with the pledging website. Sometimes it needs a few retries. So again, thank you all so much. And we're looking to hear from everybody.
And thank you, Nancy, and your team for your amazing work on stewardship, the Ministry of Stewardship this year. Thanks so much. So my friends, as we come together this Sunday, we're going to spend a moment or two reflecting on the week, and in particular on the verdict in the George Floyd murder case. I don't know about you, but I was on the edge of my seat waiting for that verdict to come in, having been disappointed way too many times in the past. And when the verdict, when the jury was out for only 11 hours, 10 or 11 hours, as an old trial attorney, I said, aha, I think they're going to find a guilty verdict on all three counts. And that's what they did. But when the verdict was announced, I just broke down into tears. I don't know if you felt the same way. So if you read the Parish distribution this week, I had a few thoughts about the verdict. I think that in so many ways, life is random. That verdict, in many respects, depended upon a little 9-year-old girl wanting some Starburst candy. She persuaded her cousin, her older cousin, a 17-year-old, to walk down the street to the corner store to start the Starburst. And the 17-year-old woman looked over and saw what was going on in the George Floyd arrest and took out her cell phone. And, you know, as a trial attorney, to me, that was the biggest piece of evidence that the prosecution had. So it reminded me that even, you know, something as simple as a cell phone can help us be an upstander rather than a bystander in life. And the second thing that I took away was when I'm always really excited about the makeup of juries. I remember having to choose juries when I was a trial lawyer. And I was very excited to learn that this jury was very, very young, relatively young. There were not even many people in their 40s on the jury. So it was a relatively young jury. Many of our young people have registered to vote now. They wanted to vote in some of the elections, recent elections, and the jury list, of course, is drawn from the voting list. So they probably got called to jury duty. And I thought that may have made a difference here in many respects. And then finally, I was called by this verdict to realize the difference between justice and accountability. At first, I posted on my social media, finally justice, this is what justice looks like. And I was reminded by my friends and family of color that, no, this really isn't justice. Justice would have been if George Floyd and all the others weren't put in the situation in the first place. So it's more a question of accountability. And we have a long way to go, my friends, until we are anything close to justice for people of color in this country when it comes to the police efforts. So I really want us to reflect on this. I do think somehow this is a shift. Maybe it's just me hoping, but I think for the first time we saw police officers testifying for the prosecution, including the chief of the accused. And I honestly felt a shift in that whole incident. I remember when George Floyd was first killed, his little daughter saying a few days later, "My daddy is going to change the world." And I honestly think in many respects that's true. So I invite us to take a few moments of reflection. And there have been certainly more incidents since George Floyd already, but let's just focus on that particular life, the life of George Floyd, and the verdict that we all heard this past week. And Ed's going to play some meditative music. And I invite you, if the Spirit moves you, to use your chat function and put 1 or 2 words in the chat about how you felt when you first heard that verdict. And Kate will make one of her magical word clouds sometime this week. So let's take a few moments of reflection, my friends, and 1 or 2 words in the chat about how you felt when you heard that verdict this week. And as I say, we'll make a word cloud from all of your one-word feelings from this incident. We'll do that later in the week. Now I invite Elaine to offer our reading.
The Visitor by Tara Moore. The old dream gave way to the new dream because the new dream grew up and grew out and waited at the window, black against the sky, like branches of an oak. The old dream didn't end or crumple into wrinkles. It simply slipped into darkness and found another home. Each of us are containers of dreams for a time, visited by them, shadows, background music, house guests hovering where the ceiling meets the wall, painting at the edges of our lives. We are reluctant hosts. Don't interrupt my plans, my certainty. Don't ask that of me. Don't upend the teacups. Don't open that window to the wind. Don't make me crack the fear in my back like that. Most of us live with the hoverers like this, turning over our shoulders again and again, saying, "You again? Still hovering? Not moving on yet? Can I sweep you out with a broom?" Sauce bubbling on the stove, and teenagers at the table, and damp socks, and the dog passing through. And then you, otherworldly thing, asking, whispering, planting seeds. I keep watch on you and you on me. I'm not sure how to bring you down to the floor. There's no braiding you in or incorporating you. For you would lead me out of this house to a violet moon and black stars. Maybe in the end, all the rest will be erased. All the parent meetings and the arguments and the noble gatherings at the table. Maybe all of that will be erased, and my life will be recorded as a dialogue with you. Maybe the rest is a theater of noise, and this conversation I can barely name will come forth in ink, the real story of my life. And maybe we were dancing elsewhere, even as I stirred soup on the stove. Maybe I also lived under the violet moon. I never thought I was only located here, and how I suffered when I thought I was. Tara Moore.
Thanks, Elaine. Facebook provided a lot of the material for our worship today. Elaine had posted that on Facebook, and I thought it was just perfect. And Billy Norris posted a video today, or this week on Facebook, that reminded me of all of you. So enjoy this video.
May you see God's light on the path ahead when the road you walk is dark. May you always hear, even in your hour of sorrow, the gentle singing of the Lord. When times are hard behind us, turn your heart to stone. May you always remember when the shadows fall, you do not walk alone. May you see God's light on the path ahead when the road you walk is dark. May you always hear, even in your hour of sorrow, the gentle singing of the Lord. When times are hard behind us, never turn your heart to stone. May you always remember when the shadows fall, you do not
May you always remember that here in this community of faith, in this beloved community, no one ever walks alone. Our all church theme this month is becoming. We are all in so many ways constantly becoming, aren't we? The mission statement of our church says it is so. Here's our mission statement. First Parish Church is a vital, loving community guided by our Unitarian Universalist principles and traditions. We nurture individual spiritual journeys as we learn, grow, and serve, putting our faith into action. So here at First Parish, the act of becoming is so central to who we are as a community and central to each one of us as we aspire to become our best selves. But understandably these days, the person we aspire to be and already are deep down could be covered over by distractions and stress and frustrations and fear in these difficult, complex times. The pandemic actually necessitates that we all wear masks. And in many ways, we've gotten kind of used to hiding our true selves behind those masks, haven't we? Our masks are, of course, a medical necessity, but recently I got to thinking how there certainly is something interesting about always wearing a mask. It's kind of like constantly showing up in the world in a Zoom box. In Zoom life, the world only gets to see you from the waist up. When in-person church life resumes next fall here, how many of us are going to have to get used to wearing something other than our pajamas to church on Sunday morning? And the same goes for our masks. Who are we? Who have we become or are becoming behind all of our masks? Last Sunday after church, we were moving the global pandemic stone from First Parish Church to Holy Family, and I saw someone I hadn't seen in a while, so someone here in town I hadn't seen in a while. And of course, we both had our masks on, and she got me laughing when she reminded me that a year or so from now, when we gather without our masks, how many of us are going to look around and say, wow, he or she certainly has aged since the last time I saw them without a mask. But of course, no matter how old we are all aging behind our masks. That's just part of life. And none of us is perfect anyway. We are perfectly imperfect, flaws and all. Long before we all began wearing paper masks, many of us wore social masks from time to time, didn't we? Many of us got used to wearing a persona, perhaps, because we were too scared or maybe too insecure to show our flaws and imperfections to the world. How many times in your life have you worn a social mask in order to fit in? How many times in your life have you worn a social mask to please other people? One of my favorite stories is this one from the Jewish tradition. Once there was a rabbi named Jusha who loved God with all his heart and his soul and who treated all God's creatures with respect and kindness. And Rabbi Jusha studied the Torah, he kept Shabbat, he visited the sick, and he praised God for all the goodness of the world. Though he was not a rich man, Jusha gave generously to those in need, and students came from far and near, hoping to learn from this gentle, wise rabbi. Jusha also often told his students, listen to that still small voice inside of you. It will tell you how you must live and what you must do. You can rely on it. Each day, Rabbi Jusha's students would come to his house, to the house of study, eager to learn what they could from him. But one day, Jusha didn't appear at the usual hour for his students. His students waited all morning and through the afternoon, but Jusha didn't come. By evening, his students realized that something terrible must have happened. So they all rushed over to his house, and the students knocked on the door and no one answered. And they knocked more loudly and they looked through the windows. And finally, they heard this weak voice say, "Shalom, peace be with you. Come in." And the students entered the rabbi's house. And there in the far corner of the room, they saw the old rabbi lying huddled in his bed, too sick to get up and greet them. "Rabbi Zusha," the students cried, "what has happened? How can we help you?" "There is nothing that you can do," he answered. "I am dying and I am very frightened." "Why are you afraid?" said one of the youngest students. "Didn't you always teach us that all living things must die?" "Of course, every living thing must die someday," said the rabbi. The young student tried to comfort the rabbi, saying, "Then why are you afraid? You have led such a good life." "Thank you," said the rabbi, "but this is not why I'm afraid. For if God should ask me why I did not act like Abraham, I can say I was not Abraham. And if God asked me why I didn't act like Moses, I can also say I was not Moses." And then the rabbi said, "But if God should ask me to account for the times when I did not act like Zusha, what shall I say then?" And the students were silent, for they understood the rabbi's final lesson: to do your best to be your best self, your authentic self, always, to hear and to follow that still voice. My spiritual friends, in many ways, this is the essence of becoming, the lesson in that story. In her book entitled Becoming, Michelle Obama writes this: "For me, becoming isn't about arriving, not arriving somewhere or achieving a certain aim. I see it instead as a forward motion, a means of evolving, a way to reach continuously towards a better self. And the journey never ends." My spiritual friends, we Unitarian Universalists, we are seekers. We say in our fourth principle, we each engage in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And for us, UUs, seeking is a lifelong process. What we know as truth and meaning at one stage or in one place of our life may not be the same as another. Most of us are seekers who find our true selves and lose our old selves and then recreate ourselves. And we do this over and over and over again on the journey of a lifetime. Who I am today may not be who I am tomorrow, and that's okay. As humans, we are always changing and growing, and age is no barrier to this changing and growing and learning thing. If we are lucky or intentional, we can spend the second half of our lives working on less about what we do and more about who we are becoming. Here's a wonderful little poem by Susie Kasem entitled "Coming Forth into the Light." "I was born the day I thought, what is, what was, and what if? I was transformed the day my ego shattered and all the superficial material things that mattered to me before suddenly ceased to matter. But I really came into being the day I no longer cared about what the world thought of me, only of my thoughts for changing the world." And here's something by Glennon Doyle in her wonderful book, Untamed. "My goal is not to remain the same, but to live in such a way that each day, year, moment, relationship, conversation, and crisis is the material I use to become a truer, more beautiful version of myself." So my spiritual friends, as we move along on this journey of becoming, this morning we're going to consider this. Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's more about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. I'll say that again. This is from a quote by Albert Schweitzer. Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's more about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. For me, figuring out who I am and what I want at this time in my life means first identifying who I am not and what I don't want in my life right now. So the invitation this morning is to experiment with moving along your becoming process by unbecoming everything that isn't really you. The Renaissance artist Michelangelo was asked about the difficulties that he must have faced when he was sculpting his great masterpiece, the Statue of David. And Michelangelo replied with an unassuming and almost comical description of his creative process. He said this: "It's easy. You just take the piece of marble and you chip away the stone, every piece of the stone that doesn't look like David." So my friends, the question for you to take home today is this: what are the people, places, and things in your life right now that don't look like you? And how can you chip them away? In fact, let's all take a moment or two of silence together. It's kind of awkward to do it in Zoom, but let's try it anyway. Let's take a moment or two of silence. And I invite you to think about this. What are the people, places, and things in your life right now, today, that don't look like you, the true you? And how can you chip them away? So let's be together in one moment of silence. I don't know how to tell you this, my friends, but the world as we knew it no longer exists. Since this pandemic, everything has changed. But the truth is, with every breath, the old moment is always lost and a new moment always arrives. This is something that meditators know. We breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out. And as we do this, we consciously abide in the ever-changing moment. We exhale and we let go of the old moment. It is lost to us. In doing so, we let go of the person that we used to be. We inhale and breathe in the moment that is becoming. And in doing so, we welcome the person we are becoming. And we repeat this process over and over. And this is meditation, this is renewal, and this is also life. My friends, the spiritual journey is discovering who we really are and being that person over and over and over again. Why do we so often try to conform and play it safe, or sometimes even hide our uniqueness and our own special beauty? My spiritual friends, we are the lucky ones. We have survived this pandemic. Wear your paper mask, but don't miss this opportunity to compose a new life as we come out of our quarantine, our homes, back into life again. Who is the person you are meant to be right now, and what would you have to give up or let go of to be that person? That's your homework. And I'm going to close with a prayer that I found on Facebook on Jean Penven's posting. And it's the interesting history to this prayer is Eileen Penven's friend, Joe Smith, found a box of cards at the Monterey dump, and he gave it to Eileen. And this prayer was folded into a card in that box, and Eileen shared it with Jean, and I think it was meant to come to us. So will you be with me in the spirit of prayer? O God, creator of all life, grant each of us the grace to receive our own life as a gift, that we may be delivered from the guilt that needs to deprecate self, the anxiety of needing to be important, the insecurity of needing to conform, and the envy that needs to belittle. Help us to accept our limitations without self-pity and to use our capacities without apology, to bear our successes and our failures lightly as equally deceptive, and to care for our neighbors deeply as utterly decisive, knowing they are in us. Questions without answers, and terrors without names, and hurts without easy relief. But knowing there is also in us love unused, strength unspent, courage untapped, justice undone, and beauty unexpressed. Make us ever aware that we are responsible for the life you have entrusted to us, that we may invest it with joy in what we believe to be good and right and honorable and worthy. Amen. my friends, until we meet again, may you be blessed. And now go be a blessing to the world. And we'll have breakout coffee hour. And I hope you enjoy this gift of a day. See you next week.